The wine went sour on my tongue the moment Silus Vance spoke, his voice slicing clean through the delicate, glass-clinking quiet of the dining room. He didn't raise it. He didn't have to. His voice was deep, smooth, and polished, the kind of cultivated baritone meant to carry across a long mahogany table and land hard in your chest like a warning shot. "Let's be honest here, son," Silus said calmly, rolling the wine in his glass without bothering to look at me. "We don't bring strays into this house. We might toss them a meal on the back porch if we're feeling generous, but we don't sit them down at the table. That blurs the bloodline." The air seemed to drain out of the room all at once. 20 people, senators, oil barons, heirs to old money, went completely still. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-breath. Every eye flicked back and forth between the billionaire patriarch at the head of the table and me, the woman in the off-the-rack dress sitting beside his golden son. I felt the color leave my face. My hands curled in on themselves under the table, trembling despite my effort to stay still. I dug my nails into my palms until the sting pulled me back into my body. "Dad," Ethan murmured, his face drained white. "Please, don't." "Don't what?" Silus finally turned his attention to me. His eyes were flat and icy, like a frozen lake with no bottom. "Don't say what everyone here can already see?" He smiled faintly. "You're infatuated, Ethan. That happens. Young men have their little phases with rough women. It builds character. But you don't bring the help to a gala dinner. And you definitely don't pretend that a girl who grew up on food stamps belongs in a room where the silverware costs more than her entire education." That thin smile widened, sharp and cruel. "Honestly, it's unkind to her. Look at her. She's terrified. She knows she doesn't belong here. My name is Kira Thorne. I'm 34 years old. I am not a stray. I am the founder and majority owner of one of the most aggressive biotech companies in Silicon Valley. But that night, inside a Newport mansion dripping with old money, I was nothing more than a girl from the projects who dared to date too close to the Vance Energy empire. I slowly removed my napkin and placed it on the table, smoothing the linen with careful, deliberate movements. The silence pressed in so hard it felt like my ears might pop. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Vance," I said evenly. My voice didn't shake, even though everything inside my chest was on fire. "And thank you for your honesty. It's rare to meet a man so eager to reveal just how small he truly is." A sharp gasp rippled around the table like the room had inhaled all at once. Silus blinked. His smirk slipped for half a second before snapping into something darker. "Excuse me?" he growled. "I said thank you," I repeated, rising to my feet, "for the lesson." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I moved with the steady rhythm of someone who had already survived worse and knew she wouldn't burn this time either. I passed an original Renoir hanging on the wall, the stiff and silent staff, and the security team stationed by the front doors. I was halfway across the gravel drive toward my Honda Accord, parked awkwardly between a Ferrari and a Maybach, when I heard footsteps rushing behind me. "Kira, wait!" Ethan grabbed my arm, breathless. His bow tie was crooked, his face wet with tears. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I swear I didn't know he'd be that cruel. I never would have let this happen." I looked at him. I loved him. I truly did. But standing there in the cold Atlantic air, all I could see was fear. "He called me a stray," I said quietly. "He's drunk," Ethan rushed out. "He's under pressure with the merger. I'll talk to him. I'll make him fix this." "You can't fix rot that deep," I said, gently pulling my arm free. "He didn't just insult me. He stripped me of my humanity. You sat there for 10 seconds before you said anything." "I was in shock," he whispered. "No," I corrected him. "I was in hell. There's a difference." I opened my car door. "I'm going home. Don't follow me. I need time to think." "Kira, don't let him win," he pleaded. "Don't let him destroy what we have." I glanced past him at the mansion looming in the background, a fortress built of stone, money, and ego. "He can't break what he doesn't own," I said. "Go back inside. Your father's waiting for you to finish dessert." I drove off. In my rearview mirror, the Vance estate shrank until it was nothing more than a scatter of lights against the dark ocean. The adrenaline finally hit, my hands shaking on the wheel as the crash set in. My phone rang. It was Sarah, my assistant. The time read 9:30 p.m. on a Saturday. "Kira," she said, voice tight. "I know you're at the dinner, but the legal team just emailed. Vance Energy wants to move the acquisition signing up to Monday morning. They're pushing hard." I pulled onto the shoulder and stared out at the black, restless water. Vance Energy, the ancient dinosaur of the industry. Cash poor, desperate, bleeding out while trying to pivot into renewables and biotech. They didn't want a partner. They wanted a lifeline. They needed Nexus Dynamics. They needed my company. Silus Vance knew Nexus was the prize. He knew the numbers. He knew the technology would change everything. What he didn't know, because I'd hidden behind a holding company and a proxy CEO to keep the press at bay, was that the gritty woman he'd just dismissed as a stray was the founder, majority shareholder, and the one person standing between his empire and collapse. "Sarah," I said into the phone. "Yes, Miss Thorne." "Shut it down." There was a short pause, just long enough to register confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The connection's cutting out. Did you say, kill the merger?" "Yes," I replied, my voice flat and icy. "Terminate the letter of intent. Pull the financing. Notify the SEC that we're withdrawing from negotiations, effective immediately." "But Kira," she said carefully, "the deal is valued at $4 billion. The termination fee alone—" "I don't care about the fee," I cut in. "Write the check." Then I added, "And Sarah, send the termination notice directly to Silus Vance's personal email. State the reason as incompatible values and toxic leadership." "He's going to panic," she whispered. "This deal was their lifeline." "I know," I said. "Now prep a press release for Monday morning and schedule a meeting with Solaris, Vance Energy's biggest competitor. If Silus won't sell to me, I'll just buy the company that puts him out of business." There was a beat. Then her voice snapped back into professional mode. "Understood. Anything else?" "Yes," I said. "Get me coffee. It's going to be a long night." I didn't sleep. I sat on the balcony of my penthouse, staring out at the city lights, drinking bad coffee, and waiting. The consequences hit faster than I expected. By 7 a.m., my phone was lighting up nonstop. Missed calls from Ethan. Missed calls from attorneys. And 6 missed calls from a number I recognized instantly from the due diligence paperwork. Silus Vance. At 8:30, Sarah buzzed my intercom. "Miss Thorne, there's a gentleman in the lobby. He says it's urgent. He's yelling at security." I smiled as I smoothed my silk blouse. "Let me guess. Expensive suit. Red face. Looks like he's one bad breath away from a heart attack." "That would be him," she said. "He says he needs to speak with the owner of Nexus." "Let him up," I said. "But put him in the glass conference room, the one where the morning sun hits you right in the eyes, and let him wait 20 minutes. "You're evil," Sarah said, clearly enjoying herself. "I'm a stray," I replied. "We have no manners." 30 minutes later, I walked down the hall toward the conference room. I didn't bring a lawyer. I didn't bring notes. I didn't bring anything except myself. Silus Vance was pacing like a trapped animal. He looked older than he had the night before. His tie was loose, his eyes bloodshot, his confidence leaking out of him by the second. When I opened the door, he turned sharply. "You?" he scoffed. "What are you doing here? Did you follow me?" Then he waved me off. "I'm waiting for the CEO, Kira. Leave. I don't have time for your drama." I said nothing. I walked straight to the head of the table and lowered myself into the leather executive chair. I turned slightly and crossed my legs. "Please," I said calmly. "Have a seat, Silus." He froze. His eyes flicked from me to the empty chairs, then back again. The realization crept over his face slowly, like something crawling up his spine. He stared at the logo behind me, the Nexus helix. Then he looked back at me. "The girl from the projects." "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." "Isn't it?" I asked. "You ran my background check, didn't you? You saw the foster homes, the community college, the waitressing jobs." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the mahogany table, one that probably cost more than his car. You saw where I started, Silas, but you were too busy looking down your nose to notice where I ended up. You missed the patents. You missed the IPO. And you completely missed the fact that the gutter trash you insulted last night owns the oxygen your company needs to survive. Silas collapsed into the chair across from me. He looked smaller somehow. Deflated. Kira, he stammered. Miss Thorne, there's been a misunderstanding. Was it a misunderstanding when you called me a stray? I asked evenly. Was it a misunderstanding when you said I polluted the bloodline? I was drunk, he begged. It was a private dinner. It had nothing to do with business. It had everything to do with business, I snapped. My company is built on finding value where others see nothing. Yours is built on exclusion, on pedigree, prestige, and last names. I leaned back. I don't partner with dinosaurs, Silas. I bury them. You can't do this, he said, sweat beading on his forehead. Without this deal, Vance Energy stock will collapse by noon. We'll be insolvent within 6 months. Think about the employees. Think about Ethan. I am thinking about Ethan, I said. I'm thinking he deserves a father who isn't a bigot, and a future that isn't chained to a sinking company. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen. That's Solaris, I said casually. They're thrilled about the acquisition offer. They're calling to finalize terms. Silas looked like he might throw up. Please, he said. Name your price. We'll renegotiate. I'll give you a board seat. I don't want a seat, I cut him off. I want the table. I stood. Here's the new deal. Nexus acquires Vance Energy. Not a merger. A full acquisition. We buy you out for pennies on the dollar and keep the company alive. There's just one condition. Anything, he breathed. You resign, I said. Immediately. No golden parachute, no consulting contract, no quiet exit. You walk away, I said, and you never step foot in this building again. His mouth opened, then closed. You can't be serious, he said. I built that company. And last night, I replied evenly, you destroyed it. I checked my watch. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, I sign with Solaris and your stock price collapses to 0. I turned toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Silas, I added without looking back. Use the service elevator on your way out. We prefer to keep the lobby clear for people who actually belong here. I left him sitting there, an emperor trapped in a glass box, forced to watch his empire burn from the inside. Back in my office, Ethan was waiting. He sat on the sofa with his head in his hands. Sarah had let him in. When I walked in, he looked up, eyes bloodshot and raw. I heard, he said hoarsely. The news is already leaking. The stock is in free fall. I gave him a choice, I said, leaning back against my desk. I know. Ethan stood and walked toward me, then hesitated, stopping a foot away. He called me. He screamed. He told me to fix you. He took a slow, steady breath. And I told him he was right about one thing. I waited. I didn't deserve you, he said. Just not for the reasons he thought. He reached out and took my hand. I resigned this morning, Kira. Before the crash. I stared at him. I'm done, he continued. I don't want money that comes with his strings attached. I don't want a legacy built on watching him humiliate people. I searched his face, expecting to see the fear from the night before. It wasn't there. What I saw instead was something quieter, stronger. Resolve. You walked away from billions? I asked. I walked away from a bully, he said. I'd rather be a stray with you than a prince under him. I smiled, and for the first time in 24 hours, the tight knot in my chest finally loosened. Well, I said, pulling him closer, that's convenient, because I'm hiring. And lucky for you, we're about to acquire a very large energy company that desperately needs new, non-toxic leadership. By noon, Silus Vance had resigned. By 2 p.m., the acquisition was announced. By evening, the world knew that the stray had just devoured the wolf. I never spoke to Silus again. I didn't need to. The last image I have of him is through the glass wall of my conference room, his hand shaking as he signed his resignation, finally realizing that in the modern world, the only thing that matters is what you bring to the table, not whose name you inherited. People like to say revenge is a dish best served cold. I don't agree. Revenge is a business transaction. And business, as it turns out, is booming. If this story hits you, don't stay silent. Subscribe, like, share, turn on the bell. Silence isn't revenge. Success is. Success doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels quiet. Too quiet. The morning after the acquisition, I woke up before sunrise, staring at the ceiling of my penthouse, listening to the city hum below me. No alarms, no calls, no emergencies. Just silence where chaos had lived for weeks. That was when I knew the real fight was just beginning. Power never disappears. It only changes hands. By Monday afternoon, Nexus Dynamics was the most searched company in the country. Financial networks ran my photo on loop. Headlines argued over whether I was ruthless, brilliant, or dangerous. Some called me a symbol. Others called me a warning. I didn't care. Because behind the noise, something else was happening. People like Silus Vance don't fade quietly. They bleed influence long after the knife is gone. 3 days after the acquisition closed, my legal team flagged the first move. Anonymous complaints to the SEC, whispers of insider trading. Old skeletons dug up from my foster care years, twisted into narratives about instability and risk. Classic playbook: burn the woman if you can't beat her. I stood in the glass-walled boardroom overlooking the city, listening as my general counsel walked through the allegations. Ethan sat beside me, silent, jaw tight. When they finished, I nodded once. "Good," I said. They blinked. "Good?" Sarah asked carefully. "Yes," I repeated. "It means he's scared. Fear makes people sloppy, and Silas was bleeding from everywhere. We answered every accusation with receipts, every whisper with documentation, every smear with transparency so clean it hurt to look at. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't issue threats. I just told the truth. And the truth, when backed by numbers, is lethal." A week later, the investigations evaporated. Quietly. No announcements, no apologies, just gone. That's when the calls started coming in. Executives, founders, investors, people who had once smiled politely at charity galas while quietly locking doors behind them. They wanted meetings, they wanted partnerships, they wanted forgiveness. I gave them none of that. What I gave them was opportunity. Nexus didn't just absorb Vance Energy, we rebuilt it. We gutted the old leadership, brought in engineers instead of legacy names, replaced hierarchy with accountability. We invested in communities the old board had written off decades ago, places that looked a lot like where I came from. People noticed, stock stabilized, then climbed. 6 months later, Vance Energy, now rebranded, posted its first growth quarter in a decade. And Silas? Silas disappeared. No interviews, no statements, no social presence. Until one night, nearly a year later, when my assistant forwarded me a photo. It was taken outside a private airport lounge in Zurich. Silus Vance. Older, thinner, alone. The caption underneath read, "Former energy titan seeks overseas investors." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I deleted it. Closure isn't watching someone fall. It's realizing they no longer matter. Ethan and I didn't rush anything. We didn't pretend love fixes power imbalances or erases trauma. We went slow. We argued. We learned each other outside of last names and pressure. He built something new at Nexus, something real. Not because he was a Vance, but because he was capable. One night, months later, we attended another gala. Different city, different room, same chandeliers and quiet judgment in the air. This time, when I walked in, the room adjusted, seats shifted, conversations paused. Not because I didn't belong, but because I did. A woman stopped me near the bar. Old money, pearls, polite smile. "You're very impressive," she said. "I must admit, I misjudged you at first." I smiled back, calm and steady. "That's okay," I said. "I didn't notice." Later that evening, Ethan squeezed my hand and leaned in. "You ever think about how close they came to breaking you?" I looked around the room. at the deals happening quietly, at the power exchanging hands without ceremony. They didn't come close, I said. They just reminded me who I am. Some people think revenge is about punishment. It isn't. It's about correction, about shifting the balance so the world makes a little more sense than it did before. I didn't destroy Silus Vance. I replaced him. And in doing so, I learned something most people never do. You don't win by demanding a seat at their table. You win by building a better one and deciding who gets to sit. If this story kept you listening, you already know why. Subscribe, like, share, because silence protects power, and stories like this, they take it away.